Did Donald Trump really just offer $500 billion for Alberta, and why isn't this headline everywhere? $500 billion. That's larger than the GDP of most countries on Earth. And the province in question? Alberta. Now here's the question that should immediately cross your mind. Why? Is this about oil? Is it about power? Or is it something much bigger, something that could redefine North America's economic future? Before we answer that, we need context. Because without context, $500 billion sounds like a headline designed for outrage and clicks. With context, it starts to look like a strategic calculation. Let's rewind. Alberta is not just another province. It is the beating heart of Canada's energy sector. It holds the third largest proven oil reserves in the world, behind only Venezuela and Saudi Arabia. Yes, you heard that right. Not Texas, not North Dakota, not even Alaska. Alberta. Its oil sands contain an estimated 165 billion barrels of recoverable crude. That's not speculative. That's documented. Now imagine this. If the United States could somehow integrate Alberta's energy resources more directly into its own economic and strategic orbit, what would that mean for American energy dominance? For oil prices? For inflation? For national security? This is where the excitement starts to mix with something else. Fear. Because any move of this magnitude would not just be an economic decision. It would be geopolitical dynamite. But here's the twist most people miss. This isn't just about oil. And it's definitely not just about Canada. It's about leverage. And leverage in finance is everything. Let's zoom out. The United States currently imports a significant portion of its crude oil from Canada, and the vast majority of that comes from Alberta. Canada is America's largest trading partner. The two economies are deeply integrated. Pipelines, rail systems, refineries, they function almost like a single organism. So when someone floats a number like $500 billion tied to Alberta, it's not just about buying land. It's about consolidating influence over a critical energy artery. And that changes the conversation entirely. Now pause for a second. If you're thinking, wait, can a country even buy part of another country? You're not alone. It sounds like something from the 1800s, except that's exactly when it happened. The United States purchased Alaska from Russia in 1867 for $7.2 million. At the time, critics called it Seward's folly. Today, Alaska's oil alone has generated hundreds of billions of dollars in revenue. Let that sink in. History has a funny way of turning crazy ideas into masterstrokes. So is this one of those moments, or is it political theater? Here's where Act I ends with a cliffhanger. If $500 billion seems outrageous, what if it's actually cheap? To answer that, we need to dig into the numbers. And the numbers tell a very different story. Let's talk valuation. Alberta's GDP is roughly $400 billion annually. Read that again. Annually. Now imagine a hypothetical $500 billion offer. That's just over 1 year of economic output. In corporate finance, acquiring an asset for slightly more than 1 year's revenue would be considered astonishingly low, depending on margins, of course. But Alberta is not just GDP, it's oil reserves. Natural gas, critical minerals, agriculture, forestry, and most importantly, infrastructure already built. Pipelines like Keystone and Enbridge systems connect Alberta oil directly to U.S. refineries, which raises another question. Is this about acquisition? Or is it about control over supply chains? Because control over supply chains is the real currency of the 21st century. We learned that during COVID. We're learning it again in semiconductor wars. And we see it in global energy realignments after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Energy independence is no longer a slogan. It's a survival strategy. Now imagine a scenario where the U.S. locks in not just friendly trade relations, but structural dominance over the largest foreign supplier of its crude oil. Oil prices stabilize. Refinery inputs secure. Strategic petroleum reserve pressures ease. Inflation becomes more manageable. Sounds attractive, right? But here's where fear enters the equation. Canada is not just a supplier. It is a sovereign nation. And Alberta is deeply tied to Canadian federal politics. There are already tensions between Alberta and Ottawa over carbon taxes, energy regulation, and revenue distribution. Some Albertans have even floated the idea of separation, a movement sometimes called Wexit. Now imagine the political earthquake if an American leader publicly floated a $500 billion offer. It would trigger nationalist backlash in Canada, diplomatic strain, currency volatility, market speculation, and markets hate uncertainty. But here's the pattern interrupt. Let's say, hypothetically, Alberta became the 51st state. Would Americans suddenly have to learn the metric system? Would Thanksgiving get confusing? Would maple syrup become a strategic asset? Humor aside, the implications would be staggering. The U.S. Constitution outlines a process for admitting new states, but absorbing a province from another sovereign country? That's uncharted territory. Now let's zoom even further out. Why $500 billion? Why not $100 billion? Why not $1 trillion? In negotiations, anchoring matters. A large, round number creates psychological weight. It shifts the Overton window, what people perceive as possible. And that may be the real strategy. Because sometimes the goal of a bold proposal isn't to complete the deal, it's to gain leverage in other negotiations. Trade agreements, energy policy, pipeline approvals, defense cooperation. If you make a $500 billion move, you command attention. And attention is power. Now here's the cliffhanger. What if this isn't about Alberta at all? What if it's about positioning the United States for the next global energy cycle? To understand that, we need to talk about something most people overlook. Decline curves. Oil fields deplete. Production peaks. Replacement reserves matter, and Alberta's oil sands are long-life assets. They don't gush like Saudi wells, but they last for decades. In a world transitioning toward renewables but not yet ready to abandon fossil fuels, long-duration reserves are strategic gold. And here's the urgency. Global energy demand is still rising. Emerging markets are industrializing. AI data centers consume massive electricity. Electric vehicle manufacturing requires enormous mineral inputs. Energy is not disappearing. It's transforming. So the question becomes, who controls the bridge between the old energy world and the new one? Because whoever controls the bridge controls the transition, and that's where this story becomes bigger than one man. Bigger than one province. Bigger than one headline. Let's assume for a moment that no formal transaction ever happens. No purchase. No annexation. No constitutional amendment. Was the idea still powerful? Absolutely. Because ideas shape markets. If investors believe that U.S.-Alberta integration could deepen, capital flows adjust, energy stocks move, currency traders react, infrastructure investment accelerates. Even rumors can move billions. Now imagine a scenario where closer integration happens quietly, joint energy corridors, harmonized regulation, expanded pipeline capacity, cross-border tax incentives. No flags change, no borders move, but economic gravity shifts. That may be the real long game. Fear and excitement coexist here. Fear, because any destabilization of U.S.-Canada relations would rattle North American stability. Excitement, because deeper integration could create the most energy-secure economic bloc in the world. Now let's ask a hard question. Is $500 billion a cost, or is it an investment? If Alberta's energy assets generate trillions over decades, then $500 billion could theoretically look small in hindsight. Remember Alaska. Remember how ridiculed that purchase was. History doesn't reward timid thinking, but it also punishes reckless ambition. And that balance between boldness and stability is where this story lives. Now here is the final cliffhanger before we close. What happens if America doesn't move? What if China increases investment in Canadian energy infrastructure? What if global alliances shift? Geopolitics is a game of timing. And timing determines advantage. For viewers who care about history, money, and finance, this isn't just political drama. It's a case study in strategic assets. It is about resource control, economic leverage, currency stability, inflation management, long-term national power, and whether or not $500 billion was ever truly on the table. The mere concept forces us to confront a bigger reality. Energy security is national security. And North America holds one of the strongest hands on Earth. The question is how it plays that hand. Now imagine looking back 20 years from today. Will historians say this was a turning point? A missed opportunity? Or just a headline that masked deeper negotiations behind the scenes? That depends on what happens next. And what happens next depends on political will, economic incentives, and global pressure. But here's one thing we know. When numbers this large enter public conversation, something significant is shifting. And smart investors pay attention when tectonic plates begin to move, because fortunes are made and lost at inflection points. So the next time you hear a bold proposal that sounds outrageous, pause. Ask, what's the leverage? What's the strategy? Who benefits? And what happens if it works? That's how you think like a strategist. And that's how you stay ahead of history instead of reacting to it. If you found this analysis valuable, you'll want to watch our next video breaking down how energy markets shape inflation and your investment portfolio. Because the connection between oil money supply and asset prices is deeper than most people realize. Click on the video appearing on your screen now. Because understanding energy is understanding power, and understanding power is understanding the future.